The Galactic Pedagogy Institute had spent approximately 4,000 standard cycles perfecting the art of interspecies education. 4,000 cycles of careful calibration, meticulous species compatibility assessments, and an absolutely staggering amount of paperwork that would make any bureaucrat weep with joy. They had it down to a science, quite literally, given that the entire operation was overseen by the Department of Xenobiological Educational Integration, or DXEI, which everyone pronounced as Dixie because even aliens appreciated a good acronym. The result of all this careful planning was Nexus Academy Station, a gleaming monument to knowledge that floated serenely in neutral space, accepting students from 73 member civilizations of the cooperative educational sphere. Each species had been carefully vetted, their homeworlds analyzed for compatibility factors, their physiological and psychological profiles cross-referenced against thousands of parameters. The goal was simple: create an environment where young minds from across the galaxy could learn together without anyone accidentally killing, poisoning, or psychologically traumatizing anyone else. It was a low bar, admittedly, but the galaxy had learned to appreciate low bars. The station itself was a masterpiece of compromise. The gravity was set to 0.8 standard G, which annoyed absolutely everyone equally. The Quelvarons found it oppressively heavy, the Thaxians found it floatingly absurd, and everyone else simply complained on principle. The atmospheric composition was a carefully balanced soup of gases that kept most species alive while making everyone slightly uncomfortable. Temperature zones were carefully maintained across different sections. Lighting was adjustable, and the less said about the cafeteria's attempts at universal cuisine, the better. Professor Kovalix, a Threnody with crystalline sensory structures that refracted light in what humans might call a particularly judgmental way, stood at the front of Classroom 7B reviewing the upcoming term's roster. Threnody were known throughout the galaxy for three things: their exceptional mathematical abilities, their tendency to overthink literally everything, and their complete and utter inability to handle surprises, which made the notification currently hovering in Kovalix's visual field particularly problematic. Incoming transfer student. Species, human. Homeworld, Earth. Classification, pending review. Pending review, Kovalix muttered, their crystalline structures dimming with what could only be described as academic anxiety. Pending review was bureaucratic speak for, "We have absolutely no idea what we're doing, but we're doing it anyway." The students began filtering into the classroom, a collection of young beings representing the finest, or at least the most adequately qualified minds from their respective civilizations. There was Zix, a Quelvaran whose 4 optical sensors were constantly scanning for potential threats, a survival trait from a homeworld where the most dangerous predator was a particularly aggressive moss. Next came Thornbeak and Whistler. No, wait. Those were human approximations. Their actual names involved ultrasonic frequencies and electromagnetic pulses that roughly translated to "one who observes dawn" and "she who questions stars." But their classmates just called them Thorn and Whis because pronunciation was hard and friendship was harder. Plixnor shuffled in next, a gelatinous Bolvari who communicated through color changes and smelled faintly of lavender, which was actually their species equivalent of teenage angst. Behind Plixnor came Kriish, an insectoid chitic whose translators sometimes made their speech sound like aggressive static. And finally, Valian, a tall, graceful Senathi, whose 3 eyes were currently focused on the datapad they were reading with the intensity of someone who had discovered either groundbreaking research or really good gossip. "Did you hear?" Valan announced, because apparently it was gossip. "We're getting a transfer student." Zix's optical sensors swiveled. Midterm transfers are unusual. What's their classification? That's the interesting part, Valan continued, their middle eye narrowing in what passed for dramatic emphasis among their people. The species listing just says human. I've never heard of them. Neither have I. Thorne clicked, their translator rendering it with appropriately curious intonation. What tier civilization? Valan's eyes flickered through their datapad. That's odd. They're listed as Tier 2 integration candidates. The classroom went quiet. Tier 2 meant primitive. Well, not primitive exactly, but certainly not advanced. It meant a species that had barely left their home system, that was still figuring out faster than light travel, that probably thought nuclear fusion was hot stuff. Tier 2 species didn't send students to Nexus Academy. They were usually too busy discovering that the galaxy existed in the first place. There must be a mistake, Krish buzzed. Tier 2 species aren't eligible for the integration program. Unless, Plixnor pulsed in thoughtful purple. They're part of an exception protocol. Exception protocols were rare. They happened when the Galactic Council decided that a species showed unusual potential, or unique characteristics, that warranted early integration. Sometimes this meant they discovered something revolutionary. Sometimes it meant they were dangerously close to discovering something they shouldn't. And sometimes, though the Council would never admit this officially, it meant someone important wanted to keep an eye on them. Professor Kvalix's crystalline structures chimed softly, calling the class to attention. Yes. Settle down. I'm aware you've all heard about our new arrival. The student will be joining us shortly, and I expect you all to demonstrate the cultural sensitivity and academic courtesy that Nexus Academy is known for. But Professor, Zik spoke up, optical sensors quivering with barely contained curiosity. What can you tell us about humans? What's their homeworld like? Kvalix's structures flickered in what might have been uncertainty. Earth? Class 4 garden world? Single star system? Nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere? Standard water-based biochemistry? Quite ordinary, really. What Professor Kvalix didn't mention, because the full planetary assessment was flagged with about 17 different security classifications, was that Earth's Class 4 Garden World designation was what the Galactic Survey Corps called a polite fiction. The actual internal designation was Class 12 Deathworld, approach with extreme caution. But we'll get to that. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and the human walked in. The first thing everyone noticed was the smile. Humans, it turned out, smiled a lot. They smiled when they were happy, when they were nervous, when they were meeting new people, when they were uncomfortable, and sometimes apparently just because they forgot their faces were doing it. This particular human, designation on the roster read as Alex Chen, was smiling in what they probably thought was a friendly, approachable way. What the students saw was a flash of bone-white calcium structures designed for tearing and grinding, set in a face dominated by forward-facing binocular predator vision, topped with a disturbing lack of sensory antennae or protective carapace. The human was wearing what appeared to be the standard Nexus Academy uniform, which on most species looked dignified and scholarly. On the human, it somehow looked like a disguise. "Hey, everyone," Alex said, the translator rendering the greeting with appropriate enthusiasm. "Good to meet you all. I'm Alex." The voice was wrong. Not the translated version, that was fine. But several students with hearing ranges beyond the standard spectrum picked up the underlying frequencies. Vibrations that suggested a chest cavity large enough to house remarkable lung capacity, vocal cords that could probably produce sounds ranging from subsonic to ultrasonic if pushed. This was a creature built for communication across distances. for calling across hostile terrain, for making itself heard over the screams of, "Please, take a seat." Professor Kovalex gestured to an empty station near the middle of the room, trying to ignore the way their crystalline structures were vibrating with sympathetic nervousness from the students' collective anxiety. Alex walked to the seat with an easy, casual gait that absolutely did not look predatory. If you ignored the way the movement suggested perfect balance, efficient energy distribution, and the kind of spatial awareness that came from a species that was very, very good at tracking moving objects, the human dropped into the chair, actually dropped, with a casual disregard for gravity that made Zix's optical sensors contract in alarm, and immediately started unpacking a datapad and what appeared to be a primitive writing implement. "So," Alex said, looking around with those disturbing forward-facing eyes, "what did I miss? Are we doing introductions? I'm from Earth, third planet, Sol system, out in the Orion Arm. We just got provisional membership in the cooperative last cycle, so this is all pretty new for me." Falon, who had been elected speaker for the group mostly because they were the only one whose voice wasn't currently shaking, spoke up. "Welcome. We were just discussing your home world. We're not familiar with it." "Oh, Earth's great," Alex said with what appeared to be genuine enthusiasm. "I mean, I'm biased, obviously. But yeah, it's beautiful. Lots of biodiversity, decent weather, well, depends where you are, I guess. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so I'm used to rain and forests, mountains, ocean nearby. Pretty standard stuff." Standard. Plixnor pulsed in a color that didn't have a direct translation, but meant something like polite skepticism mixed with existential dread. "What's the gravity?" Thorne asked, translator clicking nervously. "At sea level? 9.8 meters per second squared. 1G, you know? Standard." Alex paused, looked around at the expressions, or whatever the equivalent was for species with wildly different facial structures. "Is that not standard? That's nearly 20% higher than station gravity." Krish buzzed in what might have been horror. "Your bones must be incredibly dense." Alex shrugged, which was apparently a human gesture that could mean anything from yes to "I don't care" to "I acknowledge your statement" without committing to a response. "I guess. I mean, it's just normal for us. This gravity feels a bit light, honestly. Nice for jumping, though." The word "jumping" sent a collective shiver through the classroom. Species from high-gravity worlds didn't jump casually. It was energetically expensive, potentially dangerous, and generally unnecessary. The fact that humans did it for recreation said disturbing things about their skeletal structure and muscle density. Professor Kovalex, sensing that this line of questioning might lead to someone fainting, intervened. "Yes. Well, I'm sure we'll all adjust to each other's physical differences. Now, if we could begin today's lesson on applied xenobiology." "Oh, that's perfect," Alex interrupted with what appeared to be genuine excitement. "I love biology. What are we covering?" "Evolutionary pressure responses and environmental adaptation strategies," Kovalex said, structures brightening slightly at encountering actual enthusiasm for the subject matter. "Specifically, how different species have developed unique solutions to survival challenges." "Cool. On Earth, we've got some crazy examples of that. Like, we've got these things called tardigrades, water bears, that can survive in vacuum, extreme radiation, temperature ranges from basically absolute 0 to 150 Celsius, and octopuses, that can solve puzzles and edit their own RNA on the fly. And then there's the—" "I'm sorry," Falon interrupted, their three eyes focusing with laser intensity. "Did you say survive in vacuum? As in the void of space?" Oh yeah, tardigrades are wild. They go into this cryptobiotic state and just turn off, basically. Can survive like that for decades. They're tiny though, like microscopic. Really cute under magnification. The students exchanged looks. On any civilized world, space exposure was immediate death. The concept of life, any life, surviving vacuum was theoretically possible, but practically absurd. The fact that Earth apparently produced organisms that did it casually suggested things about Earth's environment that no one wanted to think about too hard. And these creatures are common on your world? Plixnor asked, rippling through concerned shades of blue. I mean, they're everywhere. Moss, leaf litter, ocean sediment. Honestly, they're probably on you right now if you've been outside on Earth. Not harmful, though? Alex added quickly, noticing what might have been panic spreading through the classroom. They're basically harmless. They just exist really aggressively. Professor Kovalex's structures were now pulsing in what looked like a migraine. Perhaps we should start with the lesson plan. Chapter 7. Adaptive Responses to Predatory Pressure. This should be relatively straightforward. It was not straightforward. The lesson began simply enough. Kovalex pulled up a holographic display showing a Thaxian tree dweller, a species that had evolved elaborate camouflage patterns to avoid the apex predator of their homeworld. A somewhat aggressive bird that was roughly the size and temperament of an annoyed chicken. Note the defensive adaptations, Kovalex lectured. Coloration, behavioral modification, specialized warning calls. Classic prey species evolution. Alex raised a hand. Question. What happened to the predators? I'm sorry? The apex predators. The things at the top of the food chain. What evolutionary pressures did they face? Kovalex's structures flickered with what might have been confusion. Well, minimal, by definition. Apex predators don't have natural enemies, so their evolutionary pressure comes primarily from resource competition and environmental changes. Huh, Alex said, in a tone that suggested they found this deeply weird. On Earth, pretty much everything has something that wants to eat it. Even the apex predators. That seems inefficient. Thorne clicked. Oh, it's super inefficient. But it makes everything really good at not dying. Like, you know how you said that bird is the apex predator because it's the most dangerous thing in the ecosystem? Correct. On Earth, that bird would probably be lunch. We've got birds, cassowaries, that can disembowel you with a kick. Eagles that hunt wolves, owls that are basically silent death from above. And that's just birds. Don't get me started on mammals. The classroom had gone very quiet. Perhaps, Valan said carefully, you could describe your homeworld's apex predator for comparison. Alex thought about it. That's tricky, actually. Depends on the ecosystem. In the ocean, you've got orcas, killer whales, that hunt in coordinated packs using sophisticated tactics. On land, it varies by region. But historically, humans are pretty much the apex predator everywhere we go. The silence got somehow louder. You're the apex predator? Zix asked. Optical sensors fully contracted. Well, yeah. I mean, we're not the biggest or the strongest or the fastest. But we're persistence hunters with tool use and complex social structures. We can basically out-endure and outthink everything else. Plus opposable thumbs. Alex wiggled their fingers demonstratively, which absolutely did not help anyone's comfort level. We're generalists. We can eat almost anything, live almost anywhere, adapt to basically any environment. It's kind of our thing. Krish's translator crackled with what might have been static or existential crisis. And Earth produces multiple potential apex predators? Oh, sure. Like I said, orcas, polar bears, some of the big cats. Crocodiles have been apex predators for like 200 million years and basically haven't needed to evolve because they're already perfect at what they do. Actually, now that I think about it, most continents have several competing apex predator species. Keeps things interesting. Interesting. Plixnor pulsed in a color that meant, I have made a terrible mistake and would like to leave. Professor Kovalix, whose entire crystalline structure was now humming with stress, decided to pivot. Moving on. Let's discuss environmental pressures. Temperature tolerance, for instance. Most species have a comfortable range of approximately 15 to 20 degrees, with extremes causing physiological distress. The classroom is maintained at 18 degrees Celsius for this reason. Oh, this is nice, Alex agreed. Comfortable. Earth's average is about 15 degrees, but we've got extremes. Deserts hit 50 plus, polar regions go down to negative 50 or worse. Humans live in both. That's a 100-degree range, Thorne said, translator struggling with the numbers. Yeah, we're pretty adaptable. I mean, we need technology for the real extremes, but we can survive short-term exposure to temperatures that would kill most organisms. Hypothermia and hyperthermia are definitely concerns, but we're remarkably resilient. Oh, and we can adjust, acclimatize, I mean. Someone from a hot climate can adapt to cold and vice versa. Takes a few weeks, but our bodies just sort of figure it out. Valan was now frantically scrolling through their datapad, pulling up what appeared to be Earth's planetary classification. Their three eyes went wide. This says Earth experiences regular seismic activity, has active volcanic systems, faces periodic asteroid impacts, and has weather patterns that include something called hurricanes, with wind speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Yeah, hurricane season sucks, Alex agreed cheerfully. Although I'm from the Northwest, so we mostly deal with earthquakes and the occasional tsunami. And wildfire season, that's gotten rough. But you learn to prep for it. You experience regular natural disasters and just live with it. Plixnor was now a color that didn't exist in any known spectrum of emotional expression. What else are we going to do? Move? Alex laughed, which was apparently a sound humans made by expelling air in short bursts that their translator rendered as amusement, but which everyone else's hindbrain interpreted as a threat display. Earth's home. You deal with the bad parts because the good parts make it worth it. Zix had been quietly researching on their own datapad and now looked up with what might have been terror in their optical sensors. Your planet has a magnetosphere that regularly bombards the surface with radiation. Your sun produces periodic mass ejections of charged particles. Your moon creates tidal forces that would tear apart smaller planetary bodies. Your atmosphere has a partial pressure of oxygen that's nearly toxic to most species. And your entire planetary surface is covered with organisms that, according to this, are aggressively trying to survive. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds bad, Alex said, still smiling that disturbing smile. How is it not bad? Krish buzzed. Because it's beautiful, Alex said simply. Yeah, nature's trying to kill you sometimes, but that's just life. You learn to respect it, work with it. And when you see a sunset over the ocean, or watch the northern lights, or stand in an old-growth forest and realize those trees are thousands of years old, and they've survived everything Earth could throw at them. I don't know. Makes you appreciate it, you know. There was a long moment of silence as the class processed this. The human appeared to be emotionally attached to a planet that was actively hostile to life. This was either deeply poetic or deeply concerning, and no one was quite sure which. Professor Kovalex decided to take a break before someone had a panic attack. The break gave the students time to do what students across the galaxy did best: gossip and panic research. Within 10 minutes, they'd pooled their datapads and pulled up every piece of information they could find on Earth and humans. What they discovered did not help anyone's stress levels. "Okay, so," Valan said, acting as speaker again because they were apparently a glutton for psychological punishment. "I've compiled a list. Earth is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, which is a category I didn't even know existed because most Class 9 and above planets are quarantined as too dangerous for exploration." "That's not even the worst part," Zix added, optical sensors quivering as they scrolled through data. "Look at the biodiversity index. Earth has somewhere between 8 and 10 million distinct species. Most civilized worlds have maybe a few 100,000. Earth's organisms are so aggressive at surviving that they've filled basically every available niche. Including," Thorne clicked ominously, "inside other organisms. It says here that the average human body contains approximately 39 trillion bacteria." Everyone looked at Alex, who was casually sipping something from a container labeled coffee, and appeared completely unaware of the horror unfolding nearby. "Symbiotic bacteria," Plixnor pulsed weakly. "They're filled with other life forms." "Wait, it gets better." Krish's translator crackled with what might have been hysterical laughter. "Their immune system. It says here that human immune systems are so aggressive that they regularly attack and destroy invasive organisms, and sometimes attack their own bodies by mistake. They have a word for this: allergies. Their own defense systems are so powerful they can accidentally kill them. And they live with this?" Valan asked. "They take medication," Zix read. "They've developed pharmaceutical interventions for when their own bodies try to murder them. This is normal for them." The list continued. Humans could survive losing significant percentages of blood volume. They could regrow damaged tissue. They could recover from injuries that would kill most species through sheer biological stubbornness. They had something called adrenaline that essentially turned off their pain receptors and boosted their physical capabilities during emergencies, allowing them to perform feats of strength that should be anatomically impossible. "Oh, here's a fun one," Valan said, though their tone suggested it was not fun at all. "Human pain tolerance. It says that humans can remain conscious and functional through levels of pain that would send most species into shock. They have something called fight or flight response that overrides survival instincts." "Which means?" Plixnor asked. "Which means," Valan continued, "that when most species encounter danger, they run. When humans encounter danger, their body gives them the option to either run or attack it. Their biology includes the assumption that fighting might be a valid option." Everyone looked at Alex again. The human had finished their coffee and was now doing something that looked like stretching, moving their joints through ranges of motion that seemed anatomically excessive. "We should tell them," Thorne clicked. "They should know that we know." "Know what?" Krish buzzed. "That their entire existence is basically a horror show to the rest of the galaxy? That's probably not the best foundation for friendship." "But they're being so nice." Plixnor pulsed in confused lavender. "Look at them. They smile. They laugh. They use words like beautiful about their death world. Either they're in deep denial or they genuinely don't see themselves as terrifying," Zix finished. "Which might be worse, actually. It means this is just normal for them." Professor Kovalik's structure chimed, calling them back to class. Everyone returned to their seats, with the careful movements of prey animals trying not to attract predator attention. Which was ridiculous, because Alex was clearly not going to attack anyone. But evolutionary instincts were hard to override. "Now then," Kovalik said, "let's continue with a more practical exercise. We'll be conducting a basic laboratory assignment examining stress responses in controlled environments. Partner up, please." The musical chairs scramble of students trying to avoid partnering with Alex, while also trying not to be obviously rude about it, was almost comedic. Almost. In the end, it was Valan who ended up at the human station. Because someone had to, and they'd already appointed themselves spokesperson. "Hey," Alex said, still with that smile. "Guess we're partners. This should be fun." "Yes, fun." Valan tried to make their vocalization sound enthusiastic. It did not work. The exercise was simple. Expose a test organism, a simple lab-grown cellular culture, to various environmental stresses and measure its response time. Temperature change, pH variation, minor radiation exposure. Standard stuff. The kind of thing you could do with your eyes closed. Except Alex approached it with the kind of casual competence that suggested a concerning familiarity with hostile environmental conditions. The human adjusted the temperature controls without hesitation, cycling the test chamber through ranges that made Valan's sensory organs ache in sympathy for the poor cells. When it came time to introduce a mild acidic solution, Alex handled it with the ease of someone who dealt with far worse. "You're very comfortable with extreme conditions," Valan observed carefully. "Oh, well, basic lab safety is pretty standard in our education system. We start learning this stuff pretty young." Alex peered at the cellular culture under magnification. "Huh, interesting. These cells are way more fragile than Earth organisms. Look how quickly they deteriorate under stress. That's normal deterioration." "Really? Because on Earth, even basic bacterial cultures can survive way more than this. We've got microorganisms that live in volcanic vents, acidic hot springs, radioactive waste. Life on Earth is stubborn." "We've noticed," Valan said quietly. Something in their tone must have registered, because Alex looked up, and those forward-facing eyes focused with unnerving intensity. "Are you okay? You seem nervous." And here it was, the moment of truth. Valan's three eyes met Alex's two, and they made a decision. "We researched Earth." "Oh yeah? What did you think?" "We think," Valan said carefully, "that you are either the bravest species in the galaxy or the most resilient. Possibly both." Alex blinked, a disturbing gesture that involved temporarily covering their visual organs, and then laughed that strange explosive air laugh. "Because of the Deathworld thing?" "Yeah, I figured that might come up. The Galactic Survey Corps was pretty dramatic about it in their assessment." "You know?" "Of course I know. They told us during the integration briefing. Apparently Earth is unusually hostile to life by galactic standards." Alex made a gesture with their fingers that might have been indicating quotation marks. "Which I guess makes sense when you see places like this station. Everything's so controlled, safe. Must be nice." "Nice," Valan repeated. "You find safety nice?" "Sure. I mean, don't get me wrong, I miss home. Miss the rain, the trees, the ocean. Miss knowing that everything is trying to survive just as hard as you are. But there's something to be said for not having to worry about weather alerts or whether you remembered to check the expiration date on your earthquake kit." Valan's species didn't have a concept directly equivalent to earthquake kit, but context suggested it was supplies for surviving natural disasters. The fact that such preparation was routine said everything. But you chose to come here, to leave your world. Yeah. Alex's smile softened into something that looked almost wistful. Because as much as I love Earth, as much as it's shaped everything I am, the galaxy's bigger than home. There's so much to learn, so many people to meet. When the cooperative offered the exchange program, I jumped at it, even if it meant leaving behind everything I knew. Weren't you afraid? Terrified, Alex admitted cheerfully. Still am sometimes. But fear's just information, you know? It tells you what you should be careful about, what you need to prepare for. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do something. There was a pause as Valan processed this. The human was afraid, had been afraid, was still afraid. And yet, here they were, smiling, making friends, conducting laboratory exercises with dangerous substances like it was nothing. Not because they weren't scared, but because they decided to do it anyway. That's very brave, Valan said quietly. Nah, Alex said, adjusting the test chamber settings. It's just being human. The rest of the class period passed with gradually decreasing tension. Alex answered questions patiently, explained Earth customs without making them sound either exotic or terrifying, and generally acted like a completely normal student who just happened to be from a planet that could kill you 17 different ways before breakfast. When the equipment malfunction happened, it was almost anticlimactic in its mundanity. A containment seal failed, nothing major, but enough to release a burst of pressurized gas and a splash of the acidic solution they'd been working with. In a properly functioning lab, the automated safety systems would have triggered. In this lab, at this moment, with whatever cosmic timing the universe found, amusing, they didn't. What happened next took approximately 2.3 seconds, but would be replayed in the memories of everyone present for years to come. Alex moved. Not quickly, though by galactic standards, it was absurdly fast. The human simply reacted, body moving with the kind of unconscious precision that came from a species that had evolved to dodge thrown rocks, charging predators, and gravity-accelerated objects. One hand shot out and grabbed Valan, pulling them away from the splash zone. The other hand slapped the emergency containment button with enough force to leave a dent in the metal panel. The entire motion was smooth, efficient, and absolutely terrifying in its casual competence. This was what a Deathworld apex predator looked like when it actually tried. For just a moment, every prey instinct in the room screamed in perfect harmony. Then Alex let go of Valan, smiled that smile, and said, "Everyone okay?" The silence was deafening. Professor Kabalix's crystalline structures were vibrating at frequencies usually reserved for existential crises. That was fast. "Sorry," Alex said, which was apparently what humans said when they just prevented an accident with reflexes that shouldn't exist. Didn't mean to startle anyone, just instinct. Instinct. Zix repeated weakly. Yeah, you know. See threat, remove friend from threat, stop threat. Basic stuff. Alex looked around at the stunned faces. Seriously, is everyone okay? No splashes? The acid wasn't super concentrated, but it would still sting. Valan, who was still processing the fact that they'd been grabbed and moved by a creature that could apparently react faster than thought, managed to speak. "We're fine. You?" "Thank you." "No problem. Lab safety first, right?" Alex started cleaning up the spill with the same casual competence they'd demonstrated all day, completely oblivious to the fact that they'd just confirmed everyone's worst fears and somehow made them even more confused at the same time. Because that was the thing about humans, wasn't it? They were terrifying. They came from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years, and they'd not only survived, but thrived. They were fast, strong, resilient, and built for danger. But they were also kind. They smiled. They helped. They said thank you and sorry, and treated their own terrifying capabilities as basic stuff. Krish was the first to speak, translator crackling with something that might have been awe. You saved them. Well, yeah. Alex looked confused by the statement. Wasn't going to just let them get hurt. But you're an apex predator. Thorne clicked. From a death world. By every logical assessment, you should be dangerous. You should be focused on your own survival first. Alex stopped cleaning and really looked at the class for the first time, seeing the fear that had been carefully hidden behind politeness. Understanding dawned in those forward-facing eyes. Oh, you guys have been terrified all day, haven't you? The collective lack of response was response enough. Okay, Alex said, setting down the cleaning supplies and sitting back against the lab bench. Yeah, Earth is a death world. Yeah, humans are apex predators. Yeah, we're built tough because we had to be. But here's the thing you're missing. You know what made humans the apex predators? It wasn't our claws, we don't have them. Wasn't our teeth, lots of animals have better ones. Wasn't our speed or our strength or our size. What was it? Plixnor pulsed in cautious orange. Each other, Alex said simply. Humans survived because we worked together. We're social creatures. We form bonds. We protect our pack, our family, our friends, our communities. That's not separate from being an apex predator. That is what makes us apex predators. The most dangerous human isn't one alone. It's one protecting something they care about. The classroom was very quiet. So yeah, Alex continued, I'm from a death world. My reflexes are fast and my body is built for a hostile environment. But I'm also from a species that invented art and music and poetry. We're the creatures who looked at wolves, predators, dangerous animals, and said, let's be friends, and created dogs. We're the species that finds baby versions of other species cute and will die protecting them. We cry at sad stories. We laugh at stupid jokes. We're complicated. That's, Valan searched for words. That's terrifying in a completely different way. How so? Because it means you're not just dangerous. You're dangerous and you care. That's much harder to predict, much harder to defend against. Alex's smile turned into something softer, more genuine. Good thing we're friends then, yeah? And just like that, the tension broke. Not completely. Evolutionary instincts didn't just disappear because someone gave a nice speech. But enough. Enough for Krish to ask about Earth's music. Enough for Zix to wonder what Earth's oceans looked like. Enough for Plixnor to admit that they found the concept of stubbornly surviving kind of admirable. Professor Kvalix, structures still humming with residual stress, managed to restore some order. Yes, well, I think we've all learned quite a bit today about xenobiological diversity and crisis response, an apparently human philosophy. The crystalline professor paused, then added, for homework, I want everyone to write a reflection on unexpected adaptations and how context changes perception. Due next period. Class dismissed. As the students filed out, Valan hung back until it was just them and Alex. Can I ask you something? Sure. The uniform, your Nexus Academy uniform. Why do you wear it? Alex looked down at the standard issue outfit. Because I'm a student here. But you're also human, from Earth. An apex predator from a death world wearing the same uniform as everyone else. It's almost like you're hiding what you are. Or, Alex said thoughtfully, it's me saying that what I am doesn't define who I am. Yeah, I'm human. Yeah, I'm from Earth. But I'm also Alex, student, friend hopefully. Someone who thinks alien biology is fascinating and wants to learn about the galaxy. The uniform isn't hiding anything. It's just showing what I choose to be. Valan's three eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought in their species. The secret in the title. What? Nothing. Just thinking. Valan's vocalization took on a warmer tone. Thank you. For today. For the honesty. For the save. Any time, Alex said, and meant it. Later, much later, when the station's artificial night cycle had dimmed the corridors and most students were in their quarters, Valan composed a message to their family back home. It was the kind of message students sent throughout the galaxy. Tales of new experiences, strange encounters, lessons learned. But this one was different. Today I met a human, Valan wrote. They're from a world that would kill most species in hours. They're built like predators, move like hunters, and have reflexes that shouldn't exist. By every measure we have, they should be monsters. But here's what the classifications don't tell you. They smile. They laugh. They care. They wear the same uniform as the rest of us and do their homework and worry about making friends. They're dangerous, yes. But they're dangerous and kind, which might be the most alien thing of all. The galaxy sees Deathworlders and thinks threat. But maybe we should think survivors. Maybe we should think people who understand what it means to fight for life because they've had to do it every day. Maybe we should think friends. Today I was saved by an apex predator. Tomorrow, I think I'll ask them to lunch. In her quarters, Alex Chen was also writing messages to family, friends back on Earth, telling them about the new school, the strange students, the different customs. There were jokes about the light gravity, observations about alien biology, and a paragraph about how weird it was to be the scary one when she'd spent her whole life thinking she was completely normal. Made some friends, I think, she wrote. They were terrified at first. Can't really blame them. Apparently Earth is way more hardcore than I realized. But we talked it out. Did some labs. Had a moment where I had to grab someone out of the way of acid splash, and I think that freaked them out more than anything else. But they're nice. Smart. Really different from home, but in a good way. Tomorrow we're doing xenobiology presentations. I'm going to tell them about octopi. If today's reaction was anything to go by, this should be hilarious. She paused, smiled at her own datapad, and added one more line. Turns out being human is pretty special. Not because we're tough or dangerous or from a death world, but because we're tough and dangerous, and kind anyway. Because we're survivors who decided that surviving wasn't enough. We wanted to live. We wanted to learn. We wanted to reach out to the stars and make friends with people who find us terrifying and do it anyway. That's the real human thing. Not the claws or the teeth or the reflexes. Just the stubborn, stupid, beautiful refusal to let anything, not distance, not fear, not differences, stop us from connecting. Mom, Dad, if you're reading this, you raised your daughter right. She's making friends with aliens, and yeah, they know I'm scary. But they also know I'm Alex, and that's enough. The Nexus Academy station continued its orbit through neutral space, a gleaming monument to interspecies cooperation and learning. In its classrooms, 73 species studied together, learned together, and very gradually figured out how to be neighbors in a very large galaxy. And in Classroom 7B, at a slightly dented lab station, there was a new understanding forming. The human was dangerous, yes. Built for a world that took survival seriously, absolutely. But also kind, also curious, also fundamentally just a student trying to make sense of a weird situation. The galaxy would adjust. It always did. And somewhere in the administrative offices, a bureaucrat updated a file. Human integration, progressing adequately. Students adapting. Minor equipment damage. Recommend increased containment seal maintenance. Also recommend updating predator-prey relationship training materials. Current definitions may be insufficient for Deathworld species context. The report concluded with a note that would puzzle xenobiologists for years. Recommend focus on human social bonding patterns as primary threat assessment factor. Physical capabilities concerning but secondary to pack loyalty response. Further study needed. But that was for tomorrow's problems. Tonight, in the shared spaces and quiet corners of Nexus Academy, students from 73 worlds were learning what the galaxy had always known, but sometimes forgot. That the most dangerous thing in the universe wasn't a predator or a death world or a weapon.